The Lost Vikings is an action puzzle game developed by what is now Blizzard Entertainment for the Sega Genesis in 1993. You take control of a trio of Vikings who have been abducted by aliens and are forced to use the game's mechanics to solve puzzles and ultimately return them to their homeland. Completing a level is easy on the surface, simply guide each of the 3 characters to the exit and it's complete. But of course, it's not that simple. Eric the Swift has the ability to run, jump, and bash down walls with his head. Olaf the Stout is slow, cannot jump, but wields a shield. This shield can block enemies and incoming projectiles as one would expect, but he can also hold it above his head to create a platform for Eric and use the shield to slow his descent. Finally, Balog the Fierce has a reasonable pace, cannot jump, and yields 2 weapons. The sword can be used to slash foes, while his unlimited arrows can be used to flip switches and take down foes across the screen. As each character has distinct abilities, it's generally obvious how to tackle each stage. If you have a switch across a platform, for example, you know you need to use some arrows. If some fireballs are blocking a ladder, you know you need to set up Olaf to clear the way for the other 2. The Genesis version contains 41 levels in total, 4 more than most other versions, and the difficulty ramps up slowly as the adventure progresses. Things start off fairly simple and obvious, and deaths will be caused by carelessness more than anything. However, by the time you reach the Egyptian-themed levels, you'll need a firm command of the jumping abilities of Eric to dodge enemies, and a firm grasp of Balog's attacks to make headway. In the last half of the game, you really have to use your noodle. For example, there is a switch here, but no real way to get Balog over to the switch. You have to shoot the arrow, then switch characters so the camera follows the arrow across the map. It's a bit crazy, but I really appreciate this kind of creativity. You'll have to plan ahead as well, so you don't get one of your characters stuck in a location they cannot get out of due to their inability to jump. If any of your characters die, you'll have to restart the level, as all 3 need to reach the exit. Thankfully, there are also a ton of items aiding in your journey. The most helpful are the various food items, which add a point back to your life bar. There are also screen-clearing bombs and other goodies, giving some offensive power to the otherwise powerless characters, and an arrow upgrade for Balog, allowing him to take down mummies and other creatures immune to normal arrows. You can also trade items between characters if they are standing next to each other, making item management significantly less tedious. Of course, all of these awesome mechanics wouldn't be much fun without some terrific levels to traverse through. And this is exactly what the Lost Vikings delivers. If you think about it, having to control 3 characters, one at a time, through the same levels 3 times could get boring awfully quick. Somehow, the developers managed to design levels devoid of too much repetition. Oftentimes, none of the characters will have to travel the whole distance, instead just unlocking doors and clearing the way for the rest of the crew. You really have to play it to appreciate what a well-crafted adventure The Lost Vikings is. These have to be some of the most thoughtful levels of any video game I've ever played, approaching a Zelda-like quality. Graphically, The Lost Vikings reminds me of a European Amiga game, despite being developed in the US for the home consoles first. Still, the bright chunky graphics with subtle shading effects still look great. While it may not quite match the upper echelon of the 16-bit generation, there is nice contrast between the Vikings, the environment, and the enemies, and it is always easy to understand what is going on. The Vikings themselves also look great, with exaggerated facial features and plenty of animations for each and every action. Again, it may not be the best looking game ever, but there is a certain charm to its simplicity. This brings us to the soundtrack. I absolutely loved the Super Nintendo soundtrack of The Lost Vikings. While the Genesis soundtrack doesn't quite match the fidelity of the source version, it is still really strong. Each area blends together a funky dance sound with the stereotypical sound of the world. The opening level being techno-inspired, the prehistoric area featuring jungle vibes, the Egypt area blending in the appropriate Arabian sounds, and so on. It really is terrific and avoids the typical Genesis twang found in far too many American-developed Genesis games. Above all else, The Lost Vikings is a ton of fun to play. Maybe it just fits my personal preference in video games, being a slower adventure focusing more on puzzle solving than quick reflexes. But something about this game is incredibly special. The levels rarely become unwieldy and confusing, instead being compact but dense. Maybe it's the simple controls, with each character having just 2 key moves and needing just a pair of action buttons. Or maybe it's the fact the game never rushes you, instead giving you unlimited continues and a logical password system, assuring you can see the game through to the finish if you choose. I'm not sure. What I do know is few games match the level of polish found in The Lost Vikings. The game is criminally underrated and a must-own for your platform of choice. 5 out of 5.